Hi, and welcome to On the Road with Bobby Halton, and I'm here in Tulsa, Oklahoma, just 20 miles south of my home in Collinsville, and I'm here with my good friend Shane Ray. We've been friends for a long time.
Thanks,
and
Chief.
Shay is the former Volunteer Chief of the Year and currently the Chief of the Pleasant View Fire Department in the great state of Tennessee. And what else are you doing these days, Shane? What else are you working on?
Well, I got a lot of projects going on. I do some speaking for Fire Team USA, and Fire Team USA is a federal grant program that does a day-and-a-half workshop. And it's aimed at bringing the fire chief, the fire marshal, a policymaker, and the building official. It's trying to build relationships to improve public policy on fire protection in our communities. It's trying to get ahead of the curve on the front end, focusing a lot on fire sprinklers, but basically overall community fire protection.
Now, you're also the Associate National Director or the Assistant National Director?
Yeah, the Associate Director for the National Fire Sprinkler Association. And they're those fine folks. My job is to go out and help fire officials, whatever they can, to improve public policy.
And to understand better how sprinklers can enhance fire safety and
Absolutely.
Improve, survivability of a fire. Sprinklers don't guarantee that you're not going to have a fire,
Right.
but they minimize the devastating effects of a fire. They keep it small. And we know that for a fact. We all often throw around this statistic, and you're the guy to ask if it's true or not. Have we ever lost a firefighter in a sprinklered building where the sprinklers operated correctly?
Yeah, I would say the answer to that's probably no. They've operated, and there's a study from the U.S. Fire Administration that looks at firefighters who have lost their lives in sprinklered properties. But generally, we mess that up. Not only because we don't maintain it, but also because we put some content in the building that the building and the system was not designed for.
So we overload the
Right.
the system.
We change the occupancy.
Right. We put up dividers. Right. We do all kinds of goofy stuff, and we don't have enough folks, boots on the ground, to go in and check to make sure that those are still compliant, or that the renovations haven't exceeded what the building was designed for, which is important stuff. You see sprinklers getting greater acceptance, Shane? You think are we doing a better job of educating
Oh yeah,
folks?
I think so. I think it's the buzz right now, because I think we're finally getting it. That's how I got here. I looked at our community and said, if I worked for the city of Brentwood, Tennessee, which I did at the time as a lieutenant riding the seat, and I said, we're one of the wealthiest cities in our state and we only have 3-person staffing. I said, how am I going to, where I live in rural America, how am I going to provide enough services to cover this growth? And so when you looked at our tax rate, it says if I could have 2 people on a fire engine, that's about what I call the tax tolerance at the most of what the good citizen's going to be willing to pay, no matter what kind of education awareness we work on. And so when I looked at that, I said, what's the option? And so that's when I got into the part that says, hey, fire sprinklers, NFPA 13D exists to prevent flashover. That's the purpose. Putting sprinklers in our house is not made to cut out the fire department or even to really extinguish the fire. It's to control it in time for you and I to get out of it. So this fire sprinklers is just one part of the package, but I looked at it and said, what about fire sprinklers as a deployment option? If I can't put adequate staffing on the companies and I can't get there, our average response time in 2007 was 9 minutes and 41 seconds. Well, that's not bad for a volunteer fire department.
That's a long time for a fire.
Hello. And so it's like, if I'm going to protect the citizen and if I'm going to reduce the risk to our firefighters, what have I got to do? And so in 2001, since 2001, we've been protecting all new properties in our community and even our county.
By legislation?
Yes.
So in the county of Brentwood.
No, Cheatham County. That's in Cheatham County and Pleasant View.
And Pleasant View.
Yep.
You've got a sprinkler ordinance for new residential.
New anything.
New anything.
You build it, you protect it. That's our philosophy.
Okay.
Because we might not be able to.
How many sprinkler activations have you had anecdotally, accidental since then, have caused any property damage whatsoever?
Accidentally, none.
None. Zero. And this is 2 years now, roughly, you've been doing this.
Yes. Well, 7 years.
7 years.
2001 is when we started.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought you said 2007. So 7 years, not one single accidental.
Nope. We had some.
Which is important, because I think that's the gross misconception, that these things are going to go off all the time.
Right. And when they do, it's always human. We've had one where a guy turned around and hit it with a torch. in a closet of a new house. He's soldering some stuff, turns around, says he accidentally hit it with a torch.
Duh.
I think he was
Seeing if it
curious
would
about
work.
what happened. Well, it put out his torch. So
That's classic.
But,
That's classic.
we do think it's part of the package, but it's about codes. I did a piece on tactical pre-planning that said, you know, I spent a lot of time as a company officer drawing out pre-plans, and I'm like, no, we need to talk about how I'm going to get the hose from the engine to the third floor. That'd be a good pre-plan. So that's when we went into PowerPoint with pre-plans and actually doing that and training drills and sharing. And so that's when I started looking at codes enforcement. And you look at some of the NIOSH reports and say, here's some line of duty deaths. Well, if these firefighters, you look at just about all of them, then they'll look at some code violations. You could take Charleston. You go back way beyond anything to do with the fire department and go all the way back to the Planning Commission approving a building that probably shouldn't even have been on the site.
Well, anecdotally, a friend of mine, the fellow I'm acquainted with, Jay Lowry, was the last fire inspector in Charleston, and he inspected it in 1989.
Yeah.
I believe that's, anecdotally, I believe that's what he told me it was, but he left the job several years ago, and he was the last guy to inspect it. So what happened there since then? You know, it may have been 99, but I mean, a long time. I mean, we just don't have enough inspectors out there. We just don't have enough guys out doing that kind of work, you know, and shame on us in the process. I think that, you know, we need to get more boots on the ground doing that, because even if we get everything new sprinklered, all that other stuff is still out there, and it ain't going away anytime soon. So I think we need to be cognizant of that, and when we start talking about sprinklers, not get vitriolic about we're going to put ourselves out of business.
Right.
Another important discussion, and you're the right guy for this one too, is let's talk for a couple of minutes about photovoltaic and ionizing smoke detectors, because I know in your state recently there was activity at the legislative level, the state legislature, to outlaw ionizing smoke detectors. And Jay Fleming's a great friend of mine. I know Jay's been doing tremendous amounts of research on it, but are we throwing the baby out with the bathwater is my position, and I'm not, my position, and I'll let you speak for yourself, but my position is use them both until we find better technology, until we find more accurate measurements and more accurate systems. You should have a photovoltaic and an ionizing detector in every room of your home, in my opinion.
Yes.
Where do you come down on that?
If we held off that legislation in Tennessee because of the fact that even when they amended it to say, well, all right, we're not going to ban ionization detection, they put in there the duo detector. And so with the dual sensing technology, though, it's not tested the same as the others in the NIST report. So if we go on the NIST report, you're exactly right, Chief. We need to put a photoelectric and a ionization.
Now, I understand that the company that produces the Duo is coming back with the European version that was not scaled down, but is significantly more expensive. It's the price of 2 detectors, which just saves you the bother of having to mount something twice, but good for them. And I think that what had happened was that the American consumer refused to pay what they needed to pay to get that initial Duo piece. But you're right, the one that's currently out there, that the sensors were toned down for whatever reason, and I don't know why, and that's what skewed the NIST study and down the road and led to all of this controversy, which I think is misguided. So from your perspective, someone who's in the know and studies this problem, put them both up.
Right. And there's the fire and life safety section of the IFC has called on the smoke alarm folks and the fire service to say, let's get back together and really evaluate this. And that's where I place a lot of the blame, if you will. I think the fire service, we got a little complacent in the last 20 years and said life is good. And then you had guys like Jay Fleming trying to say, hey, there's a problem. Well, now we finally heard him that there probably is. We probably need to reevaluate.
And the other thing we know is that the predominant gas is hydrogen cyanide, which isn't going off on photovoltaic or ionizing. That's the killer. It's hydrogen cyanide, hydrogen chloride, because of all the polymers. So now we know folks at Sandia Labs and folks at Los Alamos and up in Livermore are looking at trying to create that technology, make it transportable for domestic and commercial applications to where people can identify those gases. So we're getting better, and I think that's not in part to the private sector. That was the fire service pushing the private sector, and we got to keep pushing them too,
Right.
because they're not going to go if we don't.
Well, and that's where too, that's where you got to take, that's where it's every firefighter, every fire officer, every fire chief. If you don't, it's our job to know about those situations and to understand that fire protection in the community is a complete package. When we come out and said, hey, our kids sleep through smoke detectors, if they're under 14, the sleep specialist said, duh, we knew that forever. Well, those are our jobs to inform the citizen about that this is a complete package. That way you do have smoke detection, you do have fire sprinklers, you do have an adequate fire department response for its community. That's what
and
the
that
fire
family does
protection
have a
package is.
plan,
Right.
and those kids know where the escape routes are, and they know what to do, and
Yep.
they know where to meet, and they've got some adult, and they've got phone numbers, and I think that's critical stuff. And you're right, we got away from it. That's that normalization of deviance, that drift into failure, that whole conversation we've been having. But it's also part of the staffing issue.
Yep.
You know, we've gotten away from articulating what it takes to fight a standard fire today, and it's a manpower intensive operation. There's no way around it. And if our communities don't want to pay for it, then they have to understand the best we can do is sometimes exposure protection.
Right.
And they need to understand clearly what that means. We are going to burn your house down and protect your neighbors.
Yep. And that's where too, that or we offer them the policy option up front that says that's where you do have to have smoke detectors, fire sprinklers, local code adoption. It's not just about fires. You look at slips and falls and stuff of our elderly. If we're caring about them, we'll make sure there's a handrail by code on their stairs. If not,
and in their bathtubs.
we'll throw it out our backs going out and picking them up.